What is definitely true is that right now there is a sense of desperation from Diosdado and the regime to control the area. Who comes in, who goes out, limiting journalistic activity, preventing people from recording. We assume that this control will allow them to extract everything they need to move right now. According to the complaints we've received from people, look, these are neighbors who see the movement in their building. People claim it was money, but also gold and cocaine.
We went to the court. We appeared when we read in the media that this arrest warrant came from this court, and we made Vito Quiles available to them. And what we encountered was a rejection, something also unusual. And what we were told was that if he showed up there, he would be arrested.
I have witnessed it myself in Madrid, and with my own cell phone, I have taken pictures of how the INE manipulates the voting envelopes. The INE, the same company that gave the management of the voter registry to Babel, the information system, this company convicted of fraud and scam. Well, they themselves opened the envelopes without being electoral officials, which is completely illegal because the Loren does not allow at all for anyone who is not an electoral official to be opening the envelopes. However, I have seen this myself. I have documented it and photographed it. In the secret room, they open those envelopes and manipulate what's inside. They can easily know the direction of the vote because we know that the envelopes are different colors. We've seen it in the case of Andalusia with different shades of green depending on the party, and they can easily switch them.
Notice that the surveys never ask about national priority. And I'm telling you that at street level, 99% of Spaniards agree that when it comes to distributing social aid, Spaniards come first in Spain, the English come first in England, and Uruguayans in Uruguay. Isn't that just common sense? You can't ask me to help your family if my family needs help. I can't leave my family with nothing just to take care of yours. Once I've taken care of mine. Once I've taken care of my family and covered their needs, then I can help. That's the national priority. In Spain, Spaniards come first. Well, politicians just don't understand this.
Castillon Confidential by Albert Castillon.
Thank you for keeping us in the trenches and for so much affection. Well, it's been a week and a day since the earthquake in Venezuela, the double earthquake. And there are things we can start to explain. For example, why did the regime close access to La Guaira? Why was Diosdado Cabello at the scene, preventing U.S. rescuers from going to certain places? What interest does the regime have in kicking the press out of ground zero, in preventing us from recording, in threatening journalists? We've seen all of that this week, and maybe today we can explain the moments. Carlos Salazar has been exiled in Miami for more than 10 years for investigating drug trafficking in Venezuela. He is a journalist and has information about why they are closing off areas, buildings in La Guaira that are destroyed because there are places where they haven't even let a single rescuer in yet. Let's go to Miami. Carlos Salazar, welcome. How are you?
Albert, thank you for this opportunity. I'm well, thank you.
It's a pleasure. What we say and what you show is very serious. The thing is, business, money, even drug trafficking are prioritized over the victims. That's how it is.
According to the allegations we've received from the residents of the area, in Vargas, in the La Guaira area, the Central Coast, where these earthquakes occurred that have severely impacted the lives of Venezuelans, tells us that we are present, we are witnessing. Albert, the way the regime tries to move to get out as quickly as possible, money they had stashed in apartments. The number could range from 120 to 250 apartments in which approximately $1 million was stored per apartment. And after the money was stored there, state officials were assigned to guard these buildings, these properties. These are really very serious allegations that we are receiving from residents of the area and from fellow journalists whom we respect and value. And without a doubt, we will continue investigating. Because as you rightly said in the introduction, the priority is to recover money that belongs to high-ranking Venezuelan drug lords, such as, for example, Diosdado Cabello. Above saving lives and finding any signs of human life that may remain in those ruins,
we found it very strange to see Diosdado Cabello out on the street and also preventing rescuers from the United States from doing their job. Still now with what you're saying, Carlos, everything makes sense, doesn't it?
Exactly. And we have collected testimonies from rescuers, especially Spanish speakers from El Salvador, Chile, and Mexico, who say that countless times they had been inspected. Their cell phones were checked. In fact, a source on the ground tells us that the search on the cell phone was for keywords, like, for example, money or cash, which shows that a highly irregular situation is unfolding. And when we see that on the ground, the ones coordinating the search efforts for missing people, for survivors, are the regime itself, it worries us a lot. Because where are they taking and where are they directing the search efforts? Obviously, very conveniently to the places where they don't want what? So that international rescuers investigate and search among the rubble for survivors. Everything is very irregular, Albert, and really very opaque.
We have seen through social media some images of bills, a lot of bills, under the ruins of a collapsed building. It's curious. There are no small bills. They're all dólares estadounidenses, US dollars, 100 bills and up, right?
Yes, well, the highest denomination dollar bill is the dólares estadounidenses, US dollars, 100 bill. And all the bills we've seen torn up and that we've seen officials try to extract are of this denomination, which is a very common practice among drug traffickers, among drug kingpins. Stacking money that they don't even have time to count, that they estimate the amount by weight. Well, this practice is extremely striking. I can tell you, after so many years living outside Venezuela, where the common currency is the dollar, I had never seen so many torn dollars on the street. Obviously, it's part of people's outrage and what leads them to report it. But I want to tell you, Albert, that right now our sources are being persecuted. Is there more oversight today after the allegations about hideouts that belonged or still belong to Diosdado Cabello have come to light more strongly, which obviously is also important to report?
Without a doubt, La Guaira is a strategic place, right, for drug trafficking in Venezuela.
Exactly. It's an area with direct access to the sea, and it has an international airport. We have received reports that Diosdado's regime, Cabello, Delcy, and previously Maduro used Ramp 4, the presidential ramp, to take cocaine, gold, and cash out through there. So we know that for them it's a strategic area. And I can tell you, Albert, with complete certainty that while this tragedy has had a huge impact on Venezuelans financially, it has also had a big impact on the regime, because later on, the approximate amount of cash they lost will be revealed. But right now, I have no doubt at all that the cash stashes of Diosdado and the cartel of Los Soles were located in that disaster area because of the strange way they have behaved. And I want us to talk about this quickly. The image in which Diosdado Cabello is seen arguing with an American rescuer.
Yes.
It happened on the road that leads to the La Llanada area. In that place in La Llanada, there is a hotel called the Sanitario Hotel, also known as the Negra Hipólita Hotel. More than 140 repatriated people were staying there, people who were being repatriated from the United States to Venezuela. So far, none of those people have been rescued. And in that area where Diosdado was trying to prevent the Americans from accessing, there have been no rescue activities. So the very suspicious behavior of Diosdado and the regime's forces and the military really stands out.
Carlos's, or something more than just money?
According to the reports we've received from people, look, These are neighbors who see the movement in their building. People say it was money, but also gold and cocaine.
That is closing off places, preventing rescuers from getting through, and definitely not letting anyone in with a phone recording to take out gold or cocaine. We have to stay vigilant because, as you may have seen, there are some videos going around that you can't trust, right? There are old videos like the one of a cave full of gold that's been circulating.
Yes, that video is fake.
Of course, it has nothing to do with the place. We have to be cautious. But that doesn't change the other thing, that there could still be gold or drugs there, right? Or do you think they've already taken everything out?
I don't think they've had the chance to remove a large amount of that illegal merchandise. And of course, the gold minerals they had in the area, they haven't had the opportunity. They responded to the tragedy very late. What is true is that right now there's a sense of desperation from Diosdado and the regime to control the area. Who comes in, who goes out, restricting journalistic activity, preventing people from recording. We assume that this control will allow them to extract everything they need right now. Move, and above all, demolish the buildings that they know have these hiding places, so they can take control of what they lost there.
What you're saying is terrible. It's a tragedy on top of a tragedy. The United States already knows everything you're talking about. They're informed.
I'm sure that the intelligence agencies of the United States are aware of what's happening. Obviously, this is a very delicate issue that President Trump's administration is not going to discuss openly for the time being. And I think the fact that journalists have leaked what's happening beyond what reporters on the ground can report is very important. And we must continue to speak out and listen to the people who are on the ground. That's what would allow us to get to the bottom of what's really happening in La Guaira right now, which, as you have very well said, is a tragedy on top of another tragedy where economic interests are prioritized over people's lives.
Well, Diosdado was never interested in the lives of Venezuelans, right? You know that better than anyone.
Exactly.
Carlos Salazar, keep investigating with the freedom that Miami gives you to do so. A big hug from Spain, and thank you very much.
A hug for you too, Albert. Thank you so much for always keeping your eyes on Venezuela.
Always a hug, my friend. Friends, that's the situation. We'll let you know if there are any updates in the next few hours or days. Welcome, we're investigating. In difficult times, true strength lies in holding each other's hands.
Let's also help our Venezuelan community who were with us during the Dana here in Valencia, and let's give them a hand.
Above all boxes, we need tape, we need alcohol, antibiotics, powdered milk, canned food, do not bring water, powdered milk, diapers for the children. Nothing in glass because it will be shipped. And gauze, alcohol, iodine, less cotton, mainly gauze.
We will provide a template with the 3 Valencia locations for delivering humanitarian aid, along with a contact person and phone number. For any information, you can contact us through WhatsApp, and we will give you all the details.
Castillon Confidential by Albert Castillon. Gentlemen, there's something we don't understand, and that's that a journalist like Vito Quiles would have the police go looking for him at his workplace under a court order as if he were a criminal. This happened in the last few hours. They went to Ida TV to ask about him. Vito Quiles was not in the newsroom at that moment, and there is an arrest warrant out for him. He himself talked about it on social media.
Vito. The police are trying to arrest me, but neither my lawyer nor I know why. We haven't been told the reason for their actions. All I know is they've already been to my workplace and my house and are searching all over Madrid to find me and take me to a holding cell. Nobody understands why. They are determined to target me for questioning those facing corruption charges and won't stop until they try to arrest me. That's exactly what the government wants, a photo of my arrest. Obviously, well, we're not going to give it to them.
What's going on? Who gave that order? They tell us that Madrid Investigating Court number 32, Judge Rosa Maria Freire. But why is the police looking for a journalist? Vito Quiles' lawyer is one of the best in this country, and my friend Juan Gonzalo Espina. How are you? How's it going?
Hello, my friend Albert. Well, I'm very grateful for the invitation to your show and to analyze this case, which is so unusual for the Spanish criminal process and also for a citizen like Vito Quiles.
First of all, did you receive any arrest warrant, any notice that this could happen, any summons that you ignored?
No, we never received any summons, neither at Vito's home nor at our law office. We are officially involved, just so the audience understands, in more than 6 legal proceedings with a lawyer, which is me, and a court representative, and we haven't received any kind of notification. That's why I argue that for a measure like a detention order or an order to locate him to be issued, there must be a proportional need. I don't understand the proportionality of this measure, and unfortunately I have to say it to your audience. Maybe what we're seeing is an ulterior motive, an aim that's unworthy of a healthy democracy, and to me, it smells fishy. I even have to say it's similar to what happened with Judge Elpidio Silva and the banker Blesa, because I don't understand how a detention order is issued for someone who is publicly recognized, someone everyone knows where they are, for a crime of slander, where the penalty is 6 months to 2 years and a fine in the case that this slander was actually committed. Therefore, unfortunately, I think this is something very unusual, and I'm convinced that we won't hesitate when we find out what really happened. And I also want to tell your audience that we went to the court, we formally entered an appearance. When we read in the media that this arrest warrant came from this court, and we made Vito Quiles available to them. And what we found was a rejection, something also unusual. And what we were told was that if he showed up around there, he would be arrested. As a lawyer, I understand that the criminal procedure law says that if a person is being sought by a judge and this man appears before the court, that order should be lifted upon his voluntary appearance. Something that hasn't happened, and that's why I'm telling you it's very unusual. I'm worried as a criminal lawyer and as a Democrat. And as you point out, what I think they're trying to do is arrest Vito, put handcuffs on him, and harm his physical integrity and dignity. And I don't think being detained for 24 hours is a whim or something that can be taken lightly. Therefore, I think what they're trying to do is send a message, a warning to others in the face of a very strange situation in a democracy like Spanish democracy.
You're reminding me of SEBIN in Caracas or paramilitary police in other countries. Look, it's true that the newspaper says there's an advisor from Maria Jesus Montero's ministry who might have filed a complaint for not telling the truth and for slander. None of that would justify this action. What you're telling me is that they're looking for the photo, the image of Vito Quiles in handcuffs so they can show it everywhere in the regime's media.
No, look, or listen, Albert, I understand that today he also filed a complaint against Mrs. Santolala for the crime of slander. And his lawyers were telling me that they had great difficulties getting her notified. What a difference, right? Yes, what a difference, right? Apparently, in one case, it's very hard to serve her. She can't be found. And the other has 2 police officers sent to his workplace. And when the lawyer tries to appear before the judge, he tells us that he won't receive anyone, that if he shows up, he'll be arrested, and that he's on duty, right? Something unusual, abnormal, and it worries me. But I also want to tell the audience that Spain is a democracy with judges who have impeccable moral integrity. And even if I come across an obstacle, I'm convinced that those responsible will be held accountable. That's what happened with other judges who made a decision that is not proportional. And well, I'm worried, but I trust our justice system.
How is Vito? And do you know where he is?
Yes, of course. We have very close communication. We are at the court's disposal. That's what we've tried to do. That's what we did yesterday. And I trust that this situation, which has no logical explanation, well, will stop existing, right? and that he can continue to be free like any other citizen, right? And I'll just say that we're moving forward. The truth will always come out in the end, and I'm confident. I insist, Albert, I think it's a disproportionate measure that doesn't comply with the law. And what they're trying to do is harm him, take him into custody, make him spend the night in a cell. That's something I'm determined to try to prevent from happening, right? We're not going to let them have that photo.
You know that if today, for example, he turned himself in with you and asked for explanations, they would keep him in a cell all weekend until Monday. You know how it is.
I've said it over and over again. On one hand, we have moral integrity, judges who are impeccable. We've seen it in the second chamber continuously and with rulings that the judges don't hesitate. But the Spanish justice system needs to be corrected, because beyond a judge deciding, which I think is disproportionate, to issue a warrant for Vito Quiles, I don't think this should happen or be allowed. Today it's Vito, tomorrow you, and the next day me. What is this? I just don't understand. That when we don't like someone or we don't get along with them, the powers that be can be used so the police go and arrest them. It's unthinkable, isn't it?
Vito, and I think he's right. And tell me your opinion as his lawyer. He tells me that everything changed after he had the encounter with Begoña Gomez. From that point on, things have gone in a different direction. Is that true?
Yes, well, since then, we've seen greater hostility in all areas of the administration. On one hand, the sanctions from the organic law on citizen security that were leaked, which claimed he had been reported for an alleged 10,000 euros, supposedly for refusing to identify himself to the police, something we haven't been notified about either. In all the procedures of the aggressive prosecutor's office, appealing the decisions to close cases and opposing our decisions. We have found that when we try to find an easy way to appear before a court, they don't make it easy for us, right? Testifying by video conference is possible, or by request from Madrid, since both he and I are in Madrid, right? We've come across this. Criminal proceedings that make no sense at all, like the last one where he was supposedly accused of fraud for a train ticket he bought for one route and got off at a different stop. I mean, I don't know, these are pretty unusual things, right? So, well, he avoided going through a very tough time. People should understand that too. He's 25 and spoke to his mother this morning. His mother's parents, his grandparents, and their families have to put up with their son being pointed at every day, all the time on TV, right? So he's not having a good time. Honestly, we may like Vito's work more or less, just like we may like the work of other journalism professionals more or less. But I think taking this to a personal level and attacking, hurting, and pointing fingers doesn't do any good or teach anything. Pues no hace bien a nadie.
Did you file a complaint against Begoña Gomez?
A procedure was filed against Begoña Gomez, but I'm not the one handling that case. It's one of the only cases, or the only criminal case, that I didn't advise him to file. At this moment, since, as you know me well, I always try to act with caution and moderation in criminal proceedings involving Vito, so that people understand. We have several, including Sara Santaolala's case, which was closed regarding the alleged sling assault, and we are waiting for the provincial court to confirm due to the lack of incriminating evidence against Vito, since everyone, all of Spain, saw the video. The other criminal case against, let's say, the authorities, that is against the wife of the former president, was closed because the images also did not show that she had committed a criminal offense. We're also waiting for confirmation from the Madrid provincial court. My advice as a lawyer was to wait for the court to confirm that closure and to start actions when this happened. In his eagerness and at his age, he decided to file that complaint. So yes, he did file that complaint, but I am not handling that particular case.
It's very dangerous. I agree with you. This isn't about people, names, or whether we like someone more or less. A journalist in Spain ordered to locate him for a defamation case. When everyone knows who it is, and through his lawyer, that's you, to appear before the judge, and they tell him no, that if he goes in, they'll arrest him. I can't think of anything other than a direct order from high-ranking politicians, and that would be very serious, right, Juan, if that were the case?
Yeah, gravísimo, peligroso. Very much so. I hope all of us Democrats denounce it. I want to take that path of moderation, to be prudent. I want to enter an appearance, get a copy of the entire file, and make a legal judgment when this comes up. But now I say, I don't think what we're experiencing right now is proportional. And therefore, I understand that this decision should or will have to be revoked, since I believe it is on the borderline of legality.
What are you going to do today, Saturday, Sunday? Are you going to try to appear before the judge again or not?
Well, I hope that this can be resolved before the weekend.
Let's see if we can get it done today. We're waiting. A big hug, Juan. How are you? It's always a pleasure to talk to you. Encouragement from me, a hug from you. Gentlemen, finally, we've managed to get everyone talking about the grandchildren law, even if it's just like the PP does, half-heartedly. Even if it's like Narciso Michavila or Carlos Salsina say, this isn't important. They say he's always right. Michavila is always right, isn't he? He's looking more and more like Atezanos. Well, they say the grandchildren law doesn't matter because the Sarah vote is barely important and the change would be minimal. Look, I want you to see this map from the debate. On the left, you see the vote people cast when they go to the polls. There you see more PP than PSOE. On the right, the Sarah vote, it's all PSOE. Or is it that everyone who has left Spain is a socialist, or is someone cooking the votes, right? Well, this doesn't worry him. My dear Carlos Marcos, political analyst, how are you, my friend?
Good morning, Mr. Alberto. We're holding the fort.
Well, the Sarah vote is finally making news. And the grandchildren law, it took them a few years to realize what we were saying here 3 or 4 years ago, that this wasn't legal.
No, I think there are a lot of people watching us, right? And then they forget to mention where they got the information from, because in fact, you raised this issue a long time ago when things still had a possible solution. But now I also see on TV talk shows that they're already talking about the right of Basque exiles to vote in the Basque country. And that was also discussed on this program.
Was it you who said this? Do you remember?
It was discussed here, but well, now there are the talk shows. Let's see if they think I'm out of my mind. It also bothers me a lot, not all at the same time. Immigrant regularization on one hand, the grandchildren law on the other, both things. What they do is increase the number of people who are supposedly going to live in Spain. And I say supposedly because we've had 40-something years of democracy, right? I think it's 50. And in that time, all these grandchildren who now seem to have their hearts burning with Spanish patriotism, well, they want to come. Yeah, it doesn't seem serious because no one stopped them from coming before. I repeat, we've had 50 years of democracy, a man, a son, or a grandson of a Republican, of those who went into exile. Yes, there were some, of course there were, well, today, in 1978, they could have easily returned to Spain. The thing is, they are. We're not talking about grandsons anymore, but likely great-grandsons. People who have no connection, people who don't know Spain, people who have absolutely no intention of coming to settle in Spain. It simply grants them dual citizenship. Hey, that doesn't sound bad at all. I'd love to have dual citizenship with the Dominican Republic, for example, if they gave it to me. It doesn't seem impossible, but any real sense of being Spanish, nobody's going to buy that. Pedro Sanchez, Spanish sayings are very rich, like, if you're already wet, jump in the river. He doesn't care about anything. Once he's gone this far, he might as well go all in. He doesn't care about anything. His goal is what it is. All the formal charges we've been seeing yesterday, the day before, every day, which we'll surely talk about later. He doesn't care. He really doesn't care at all. This guy has more nerve than anyone I've ever seen in my life. But I don't know if he's aware, and he probably is, of the tremendous damage he's doing to Spanish democracy, to the institutions, to young people. How is he injecting adrenaline into polarization every day so that we're more and more divided among ourselves? He and his partners who keep him in power and are just as guilty want this Spain. Today, Mercedes Gonzalez was indicted.
With the civil guards now being indicted? Honestly, it's an unbelievable streak. There have never been so many high-ranking officials indicted. You know what's worse? They're still there. They're still holding the position as general director, and therefore they can still pull the strings. They can still sabotage investigations, as the DAO said, when their case is related to Sanchez's circle. Just stay on the sidelines. Do you remember that phrase from Manuel Llamas? What a shame it is to feel that we're surrounded by enemies of the nation, but there are people. And this one came from Uruguay, who's more Spanish than many Spaniards and who has defended decency, the rule of law, and democracy like very few have. Gabriel Araujo, congratulations and a big hug, my friend.
Good morning, Albert, Carlos, and everyone at Confidenciales. It's an honor to be with you again.
Well, you are a role model. I remember how you fought hard to show that the law wasn't being followed at all in electoral matters. Like with the grandchildren law, it was a loophole, nobody talked about it, and now everyone does. How do you feel?
Well, let's say with the satisfaction of having done my part, at least in this part, right? I wish we could also reach these institutional levels with other messages, also very important ones. The protection of minors, the issue of abortion, euthanasia, in short, all matters that directly concern the right to life and freedom. But well, little by little, step by step, as they say, let's take it one step at a time. We'll go step by step. And also, thank you, seeing Carlos and all the confidants who have achieved this. Obviously, putting all these important things on the table, right?
It's hard for me to understand why journalists who saw what I did, I mean, this is illegal, this can't be done the way they've been doing it, and yet they've stayed silent, and some are still silent to this day. Look, just for getting involved in the democratic memory law. And Gabriel, can you give me a hand? Is this illegal? The project was illegal from minute one to begin with. Remind me, Carlos, this was Bildu's idea, right? Life, the things themselves.
Of course, it was the change from the historical memory law to the democratic memory law, which was literally drafted by former ETA members who are now in Bildu.
Of course, how could something turn out well when it starts with the essence of ETA's terrorism? It had 4 reports against it. General Counsel of the Judiciary, the Prosecutor's Council, the Data Protection Agency, and the Office of Control and Coordination of the Ministry of the Presidency, that is Bolaños' office. 4 reports against it. How did it still go through? Go ahead, Gabriel.
Well, like almost all laws that have an ideological component, let's remember the gender violence law also went through despite a very strong opposing report, both from the General Counsel of the Judiciary and even from the Prosecutor's Office and the Council of State. But well, since that's on the agenda and it has to go through, it's surprising how the democratic memory law is. It went through despite very serious observations like the one made by the General Counsel of the Judiciary, which really raised many objections. Regarding the glorification of Francoism and freedom of expression, a historical truth really can't have a criminal law component. This is a scandal. And indeed, the governing body of the judges focused on that. And also the Spanish Data Protection Agency regarding the issue of the victim census and the special categories of data that really isn't properly safeguarded according to protocol. It's also true that the Fiscal Council barely managed to approve a favorable report. But the minority of that Fiscal Council was actually very forceful in saying that they had doctored that report to, let's say, remove any kind of criticism despite all the serious violations. And finally, what you mentioned, Bolaños' own office, right? An organization controlled by the Socialist Party, which focused on the legality of the law for invading the powers of the city councils, forcing them to change the names of streets and squares, as we've seen happen in Madrid. They have been forced to change that. That responsibility clearly belongs to the City Council and the Statute of Autonomy. That's what Borao and Bolaños' office focused on.
That is to say, Tiren started, was born with Bildu, and do you know who drafted the law? Oscar Puente's sister. What could go wrong, Carlos? What could go wrong?
Well, everything we're seeing, Albert. But look at how evil-hearted, how wicked these ETA murderers were when they took advantage of Pedro Sanchez's weakness to impose their criteria in the drafting of this law. Do you know what isn't included in the democratic memory law? More than 4,000 people were murdered in Paracuelos del Jarama by the Republic in Madrid while under state custody. No one remembers them. They're not mentioned anywhere. No one talks about their relatives, not about grandchildren, cousins, or anything. They were treacherously killed by the very state that had them in its custody. And it seems that this doesn't fit into the democratic memory of the Spanish Civil War. Just like the Checas, the Virgin of the Engineers of Madrid, and the multitude of murders don't fit in either. Many of the bones that unfortunately are still in the ditches today belong to nationals. They're nationals and they don't want to acknowledge them. When someone shows up with a flag or anything identifying them as being on the nationalist side, they cover it with dirt and keep searching. They don't care about the truth, democracy, or anything else. It's a mafia entrenched in power that's programmed to keep power tightly under their control. And they're willing to do anything to make sure that situation doesn't change.
This woman is Sofia Puente, the prosecutor for 20 years, sister of Oscar Puente. Sanchez put her in the position of General Director of the Legal Service from 2020 to 2023, and then he removed her. We suspect that for this, so she could prepare the grandchildren's law, he placed her as Secretary General for Innovation and Quality of the Public Service of Justice. What did this woman do? I think it's something that deserves jail, and she'll probably end up in prison in a few years. Remember my words. Because she committed malfeasance in an obvious way. She took what had been accepted as law and changed it without Congress's permission. What's more, you've shown, Gabriel, that Congress voted against what Sofia Puente wrote in the Democratic Memory Law. Congress, including the PSOE, right?
Exactly. And for this reason, she has filed a lawsuit against her for misconduct up to today. And I think Mano Limpia is also preparing another one. And this really will put Sofia Puente on the defendant's bench because what she did was extremely serious. She completely altered the Democratic Memory Law in the 8th additional provision regarding granting nationalizations to the exiles. And she extended it to cases that were even vetoed by Congress, amendments that were specifically vetoed. That is to say, she opened this instruction on October 25, 2022. What she did was just a few months after the law was enacted, she interpreted that law in a way that suited her. Even at the Transparency Council level, she admits that it was her idea. There are no minutes, no meetings, nothing. There is nothing to prove that she collected any reports. It was something she did on her own as the Director of Legal Certainty. Just imagine, my friends, legal certainty when what she's doing is completely altering that law, which was already illegal for the reasons we just mentioned. And she imposed a presumption of exile on all Spaniards, which was not stated like that in the 8th provision of the law. Then, to encourage naturalizations, it says that it's not necessary to renounce your nationality when there are countries that really don't allow dual nationality. Then the serious issue, I think, is the formalization deadline. What this has allowed, my friends, is that this deadline ended in October 2025. What another instruction has allowed is to submit the application, and then whenever I want, I present the documents. I mean, it's really completely illegal. That's like filing an appeal now against something where the deadline is expiring and telling the court, well, I'll submit the documents for my appeal when I have them. That's completely illegal. And this really, what is this? For the reason why Inico in Argentina, the company that got Jessica the job isn't in Argentina processing those corrections for the additional documents in the file. And also in Cuba, that Castro's company. So what really needs to be done right now, I especially call on PP, Vox, Astiwar, and Manuel Limpia, so that they actually file an appeal. Or at the very least, demand that all those applications where documents are being added after October 2025 must be rejected. These citizenship grants are unlawful because documentation was submitted after the deadline. So that's where the solution to this very serious problem lies.
I don't know if this needs to be stopped, and there are several complaints filed. Some are requesting precautionary measures. But gentlemen, the machine keeps moving forward. Paco Salazar has been in Argentina for over a year. Do you remember the one who was very handsy and would mess with his zipper in the PSOE, who was a friend of Sanchez and was in his presidential cabinet? They had to get him out of Spain precisely because of complaints from socialist women, and now he's there looking for votes everywhere. Pilar Candela, Secretary of State for Migration, is directly asking for votes. Listen.
We have to raise our voices, but above all, now more than ever, we have to vote. Please, let's win with the power of democracy. With the power of our vote, let's all mobilize everyone who can.
To our friends, a Secretary of State asking for votes for the PSOE using the fear of the far right coming. Cesar Mogo, Head of Foreign Affairs for the PSOE from Buenos Aires.
It will have a much larger population than 95% of the Spanish provinces.
Incredible.
Yeah.
And the journalist is delighted to hear that Buenos Aires will have almost more voters than Barcelona or Madrid. Or Gemma Lamedo. These are people who have been campaigning for years. Gemma Lamedo, as you can see, is the vice president of the government of Asturias. Adrian Barbon, president of Asturias, has traveled around Mexico, Argentina, and a lot of other countries, asking for the PAIDE and the consuls, who should be independent representatives, hold rallies with the Spanish flag and anthem. And there you can see them convincing everyone we give them free passports. Of course, right next to it is the census, and we help you say which province you're going to vote in. Let me add two more for you.
Let me give you two more. Lorena Sanchez, the former secretary of the PSOE in Argentina, admits that she goes to the lines where people are applying for citizenship to drum up votes. And also, the PSOE of Argentina has released an announcement so that without an appointment, completely free of charge, they advise the newly nationalized people mainly to help them get their nationality and to apply for Social Security benefits. This is what it says, literally.
We saw it yesterday and we're seeing it now. Or this, look at this photo of advisors for the grandchildren law with a giant picture of Pedro Sanchez. It reminds me of the Franco era when Franco's photo had to be in every school. Do you remember that time, Carlos? I mean, now it's Sanchez. Now, Sanchez is at every rally and gathering. How can people see this and still say there's nothing to worry about, Carlos?
No, let's see. One thing is the language used by political circles, and another thing is what things are really like for ordinary people. Ordinary people aren't idiots by any means. This gentleman has served in government for 8 years. Yet only chooses to address and speed up this issue a few months before the election. Do you know why in the European elections this whole fuss doesn't happen with the Sierra vote? It doesn't matter because it's a single constituency and the influence there is very limited. But when it's divided by provinces, there are provinces where the last seat is decided by a difference of less than 200 votes. And since we still don't know what the criteria are for assigning a naturalized citizen to one province or another, man, I think it was in Teruel where one seat is worth 14,000 votes. A deputy in Madrid is 200 and something thousand votes. Of course, if you register 3,000 people in Teruel, hey, they can definitely change things and adjust the seat distribution, no doubt.
Look, you're in Galicia. Where was the place from which the most people left for Hispanic America? From Galicia? Come on, they call us Galicians, the Spaniards, all over Hispanic America. Okay, I want you to look at this report on the Sierra vote. In the last 6 years, the Sierra vote in Spain has increased by 22%. Wouldn't it make sense to think that the biggest increase would be in Galicia, in La Coruña, but no. Look, Galicia is actually one of the places where it increased the least. It increased, but only slightly. Where it increased the most is Madrid, 45%, Girona, Tarragona, Balearic Islands, and Álava. It seems obvious to me that those who left were not, for the most part, descendants of Girona, Tarragona, Balearic Islands, and Álava. This is proof that this is a complete fraud, Araujo.
And there's also an objective fact. You specifically mentioned the voter registrations in which the last seat is decided by less than 3% of the votes. In fact, yesterday we saw the publication of an article in which the government itself admitted to the Ministry, in this case, of Inclusion and Social Security. Right after the elections, they published on the website the importance of the overseas absentee vote, especially its influence in 9 provinces. We have shown that it's at least 16, and you end up with 16. I mean 20. So it really does have a lot of influence, and we don't understand why these commentators you just mentioned don't come to their senses and can't see what's obvious. This is also being the influence of the overseas absentee vote is really growing a lot, and in addition to that, it decreases the importance of in-person voting because the voter registry grows, and therefore in-person voting has less weight, right? Less influence.
We're always showing you what we're talking about here. This is the voter registry document. If you scroll down, that's where it says place of origin, where you want to be registered. And there are several reasons there because of family background, tradition, because of your grandfather. And there's a section that says other reasons. And it could be just because I feel like it. From here on, that's a loophole. In fact, they even say it in the videos. Watch this one from Buenos Aires.
Not only the big cities, the major towns, which are those provinces that concentrate a significant portion of the electorate, but also the smaller provinces where few seats are distributed and where often the parties have only a small difference in votes. Between first and second place, where when there are few seats, they're all distributed between first and second place, and where maybe...
They go to the smaller provinces because that's where you need to put down the location. Look, I'll just give you one more fact. The government has bought machines. They've bought several, which are in different consulates. They've spent almost 700,000 euros, and these machines can make 50 passports per minute, like hotcakes. Being Spanish, Carlos, has really lost its value. It's worth nothing now. Anyone can be Spanish. They practically give you a passport as a free gift with a bag of sunflower seeds. This had never happened before.
Let's see, Albert. In a country where all the country's symbols are absolutely vilified, insulted, burned in the street. Anyway, insults to the king or the crown, the head of state, are no longer a crime. That is to say, a state that does not protect its identity, unfortunately ends up losing it. Of course, when you add to that state, now I think it was 1.5 million, right? People who have benefited from the regularization and from the grandchildren law, well, just as many others, right? Well, you strip away the very essence of the state, but also notice how the surveys never ask any questions about the issue of national priority. And I can tell you that out on the street, 99% of Spaniards agree that when it comes to distributing social aid, Spaniards come first in Spain, the English come first in England, and Uruguayans in Uruguay. Isn't that just common sense? You can't ask me to help your family. If my family needs help, I can't leave my family with nothing just to take care of yours. Once I've taken care of my family and covered their needs, then I can help. That's the national priority. In Spain, Spaniards come first. Well, politicians just don't understand that. They don't understand it because, of course, they try to make all these regularizations seem natural. No, the guy who just arrived from Senegal gets registered and has the right to vote is just as Spanish as you. That's bullshit. That's the last thing I needed to hear, honestly. Are we joking or what? No way. It's like if you asked me to vote in Senegal, why should I care about what happens in Senegal? I might vote just to stir things up, but that's my only reason. And these people who neither live nor have lived nor want to live, because also, look, it's true. Immigrants in Latin America are known as Galicians. A lot in Argentina, in Uruguay, in Venezuela, so many. Do you know what happened? The Galicians were clever and made a fortune there. They don't plan to come here since their business is there, but they visit in the summer. There are towns in Galicia, in Orense, the town of Avion, that during the winter are like cemeteries. And in the summer, they're full of Ferraris, Lamborghinis, Rolls Royces. Because more people live there, in this case Mexico, than here. Because if they've done well, they've gone to work, they've started businesses. And hey, in the case of Mexico, one of the richest men in Mexico is a Galician from Orense, from Avion.
Sorry, they've gone to work. I always, besides, I can say this firsthand since I'm not a Spanish nationalist or a pan-Hispanic ideologue. Because I don't have any Spanish background that I know of, but because I've seen that the Spaniards who went to Uruguay went there to work, to create businesses, to create jobs, and so on. But look, if you'll allow me very briefly an example that perfectly illustrates the importance of putting your own people first, and we see it on airplanes. Notice, friends, that one of the main instructions when we travel with a minor who needs help, who needs our assistance in case of cabin depressurization, says that the adult must put on the mask first. Adults secure themselves first, then help the child or person in need. National priorities work the same way. You can't help anyone coming from outside Spain if the Spanish people themselves are unprotected. It's very simple to understand, isn't it?
Yes, it's simple, but some people don't get it. I want you to listen to Estrada, Maria Teresa, Jose Ignacio, and Miki. Pay attention to Miki because he's been here his whole life, but they won't give him a passport. Listen.
This is another one.
Feju's PP doesn't even take 24 hours to go back on what they said about the grandchildren law. Now Esther Munoz knows that if there's a need to debate, if there's a need to negotiate, it means they're fools.
I am the granddaughter of honorable Andalusians. I have been a Spanish citizen since 2012, and I am in no way honored to be one. I wouldn't vote even to get a pension or to get anything at all. I should have spent some time in Spain and done things the right way.
The thing is, if they make 2 million, they're going to distribute the vote themselves here. Because that's the fix. No one is going to find out about the votes being sent in. In fact, even if the people abroad voted however they wanted. They, as we've discussed, are going to distribute those votes to exactly to the provinces where they know people don't vote for them and where they have no chance whatsoever.
I'm a Brit who has been living here in Spain for 34 years, creating jobs, working and paying into social security in this country all these years. And as we would say in Galicia, it's unbelievable that I don't have the option to vote in the national elections. And people who are about to be granted citizenship suddenly have more of a right to vote than I do without ever having set foot in this country and probably never will. Thank you.
34 years, Carlos, in Spain, and he can't vote. And anyone who will never come here will be able to vote in the next general elections. Is that fair?
But even Albert, until just recently. Because it seems like Pedro Sanchez has been in our lives forever, but that's not true. He's only been around for 8 years. In 8 years, he has caused more social, political, and institutional damage in Spain than in the other 42 years of democracy we've enjoyed in Spain. This man is outrageous. The thing is, listen, he's a Galician who worked abroad at first, but until recently, it wasn't easy to get citizenship. It had added value. That's why it wasn't just given away. You can't just give out Spanish passports like they're raffle prizes at a festival. That's not how it works, but that's what's happening now. They're handing out passports like people hand out flyers on the street. This will have consequences, remember my words. Because sooner or later, if things go wrong for them, they might think, hey, I'm Spanish. Hey, over there, the minimum wage is over 1,000 euros a month. Could be great for me. Let's go to Spain.
No, and besides, they can ask, right? But Carlos, they can apply in their city of residence in Buenos Aires. They can perfectly well request social security assistance. In fact, there is a project like that which is still on hold, but it would give them more than 7,000 euros a year in aid. Sanchez has prepared the project but hasn't released it yet. Also, another objective fact, we're talking about citizenships granted abroad, but within Spain, since Sanchez has been in office, almost 1,300,000 resident immigrants have been nationalized by Sanchez in recent years, 3 times as many. We have 1,300,000 new Spaniards, let's say, since Sanchez has been in office within Spain, among residents.
Careful, because yesterday the spokesperson for Jupol, Laura Garcia, was here, and she told me that the number of regularized immigrants is much higher. I'm talking about regularized immigrants.
That's a different number. Yes, that's another number for those who've been regularized. I'm talking about naturalized immigrants. Regularization is different, right?
Laura Garcia, spokesperson for Juntos por la Jupol, talks about up to 5 million. How many will actually come here with papers? Will they be legal in a few months or in just a few years?
Well, it has been estimated that maybe it will be more than 4 million, because usually the people who are here and request family reunification tend to bring an average of 4 people. That is, if we add an average of 4 people to that 1 million and something, we're talking about more than 4 million people. It could even reach 5.
I mean, can you imagine 5 million people being regularized apart from those who have been naturalized? Carlos, imagine yourself in this situation. I'm referring to those who will live here. This changes salaries, which will go down. It changes the price of renting a home. It changes the money we have for expenses, pensions, and assistance, which won't be enough for everyone. It will be very complicated. This changes our lives, doesn't it?
Man, and you're forgetting something very important. Many of them are Muslims. They come in fully coached with their folder tucked under their arm. You will start to see mosques everywhere. You will start to see that movement. Boumediene said it in 76. It's a great weapon to recolonize Spain, and he was talking about Europe was the wombs of their women. And that's exactly what's happening. When they're talking about how in some places the population is growing and there are more births than deaths, 99% of those births are to Muslims, to families that are having 8, 9, 10 children who are here and who by being born here are also Spanish. There's no control. This is completely out of control. That's why it's so important to take back control of the state, for there to be a change in government, because right now it's urgent. Now it's a national emergency. We have to get this gang of shameless people out of the government, because look, when you corner a cat, at some point the cat is going to jump at your face with its claws out because you leave it no way out. These guys are taking the state to such a situation of defenselessness, of such degradation, that in the end there's going to be a social explosion somewhere. It will happen since they control everything and leave no room. They don't care that the Civil Guard's Director General is under investigation. I think that since Roldan, they hadn't charged the Director General of the Civil Guard, but now the DAO as well. But in CEPI, they've just charged 25 more people, the brother, the wife. There are over 270 people around Pedro Sanchez who are currently under investigation for allegedly committing crimes. And nothing happens. There is an order that has already come down from Moncloa. Here, not even God resigns. No one is leaving here. It doesn't matter if they're under investigation or not, because if I keep cutting off the heads of those being investigated, the enemy could get closer to me. I need a front of these people who, even while being investigated, stay and keep the focus. Because as long as the focus is on a Director General of the Civil Guard, who has no principles, no training, and no loyalty of any kind to the organization she represents, right? While the focus is on her, Pedro Sanchez is getting ready to go on vacation at the expense of all Spaniards. That's the truth. And there are no more lies to tell. And people aren't stupid, damn it. People have eyes and they can see what's happening, but we can't take it anymore, especially now when we're paying taxes to support a bunch of shameless people, which hurts even more.
And on top of that, Mercedes Gonzalez is a journalist. You know how much that embarrasses me. But anyway. And by the way, speaking of resignations, the General Director of Finance has left, and there were 3 more executives who wanted to leave. Because they're tired of receiving orders from the government that forces them to look the other way with the president's brother, who can get paid by the provincial council but live in Portugal, or with Zapatero and the jewelry, well, we've received information that they're allegedly trying to buy their silence, and those who are going to leave are being placed in embassies. One is going to the Swiss embassy, another is going to the United States embassy. Just so you get an idea, when a Treasury official goes to an embassy, just like a police officer or a civil guard, their salary triples. They will go on to earn an average of 25,000 euros a month. It's a way to shut people up, isn't it? Gabriel, this is good.
Yes, absolutely. When we say the director of the Treasury is leaving, it doesn't mean she's actually leaving. The worst thing that can happen to her is to continue as a Treasury inspector, which, by the way, comes with a bonus for every detection she makes. Actually, also for money laundering and for any fines she imposes. And in this case, just imagine what you're saying. If her salary is tripled, then obviously it's in her best interest to keep quiet. Nevertheless, well, I'm glad that the Treasury really has taken that step forward. They have informed the state attorney that they will indeed join the case against Zapatero, and let's hope they do so with loyalty.
Right? It took them a while. It took them a while until Calama forced them. I'll prepare an image for you that you're going to like, Carlos, because Nadia Calvino was a very good friend of yours. You often had dinner together and knew each other well. No, it's fine. She's in Rabat. They know she holds a high position in the European Union, and she's recording a video to announce that with European money, we've paid for the tram for the Moroccans in Rabat. Watch.
I am so proud that the European Investment Bank financed the tram project here in Rabat, the fastest, cleanest, safest way to move around the city. And today we are signing new financing for rail and road transport in Morocco.
Why does the European Investment Bank, which she presides over, have to pay for a tram in Rabat? Can you tell me, Carlos? What is Europe doing paying for a tram for Mohammed VI, who is a multimillionaire?
I can't tell you that. What I'm convinced of is that in Morocco, they're laughing their heads off at the Europeans and especially at the Spanish. We're real suckers. All we do is invest in Morocco. I don't know what silence we have to buy. We still don't know why Pedro Sanchez gave up the Sahara without giving us any explanation, without any agreement in parliament, without any approval, without any consensus that used to be done in international politics. No, we just gave it away. We stay silent. All we do is give them money to improve their fleet, their cars, their police, for boats to fight drug trafficking. Hey, just look at where all the hashish coming into Spain comes from. But anyway, really, Albert, let's not try to find an explanation for everything that happens. This has a common denominator, and it's the same for all of them. A corrupt, criminal socialist party that has lost any essence of democratic values and wants to keep going. But look at the history of the Socialist Party, right? Yes, sir, Negrin, the history is full of murders at the hands of the Socialist Party. Behind it, there's the murder of Calvo Sotelo, who, after being threatened in parliament by La Pasionaria, his escort, who were police officers assigned to the Socialist Party. By the way, people from Coruña, and the names are there, they were published by the one who was ambassador to the Holy See, Francisco Vázquez. He published the full names of the socialists who were responsible for killing Calvo Sotelo. There it is again. I remember making you a list of right-wing heads of state who were assassinated compared to the left-wing ones, of whom there were none. This is the truth. So if we look at a small detail under a magnifying glass, no. Here there is a set of actions aimed at the same thing: to control power, colonize all the institutions, block our every move, degrade democracy, convince us that there is no possible alternative. Today, I want to celebrate yesterday's agreement in Andalusia because they were really getting on my nerves. And the PP and Vox have realized that the only alternative is through an agreement between intelligent and committed people with a sense of Spanish identity. And that any argument they have that drives them apart is doing a big favor to socialism and Pedro Sanchez. Therefore, I congratulate the PP and Vox for the agreement they also reached in Andalusia. Let's stick to that approach. Let's keep moving forward. There are difficult months ahead, but we're very close to the possibility of getting all these people out of power and putting many of them in jail.
And what Mohammed VI has done with the Sahara and the Sahrawis, Araujo, that is saying, I'll keep the Sahara because there are phosphates. Spain leave, but what if the Sahrawis are Spanish and you keep them? Is it that disgraceful?
It's tremendous. This is completely absurd. In fact, well, now in July, this issue is going to be voted on, and it's really very serious, isn't it? Because handing over, in addition, leaves those nationals they want to naturalize at the same time completely defenseless. This nationalization machine is already set to nationalize anyone who stands in front of it, and they don't realize how absurd it is to hand over a territory and nationalize its inhabitants. In other words, giving the territory to Morocco and making its people citizens. By the way, since Carlos was talking about Andalusia, a quick comment. And yes, specifically, we are very happy about that agreement between the PP and Vox. And we hope that since we're talking so much about democratic memory, they finally repeal the democratic memory law of Andalusia, which has been in force since 2017. And that Moreno Bonilla hasn't repealed it, even though he has an absolute majority. This is incredible because it's totally the socialist democratic memory law from the Andalusian PSOE. And well, let's hope that the first measure is to repeal it, obviously, right?
Hopefully, Gabriel and Mariano Rajoy didn't touch a single one of the socialist laws, including the historical memory law, which was the breeding ground for confrontation between Spaniards, and Rajoy didn't touch it. Rajoy raised all the taxes he had promised to lower, and he left every socialist law untouched. Well, Moreno Bonilla, who intended to follow that path of being a centrist and focused man, ran into reality and yesterday did the math and said, I have to reach an agreement.
Well, it's good that he reaches an agreement. Hey, there are many listeners, Gabriel, and that's my opinion, but I want yours as an expert. They tell me that Sanchez and the government don't really care about what people vote. The millions who vote without having been here, the naturalized ones, they'll take care of cooking that up themselves. What vote is inside the envelope? Does that possibility exist?
Well, and I have proof of it. I mean, just yesterday, and we've also revealed it on your show many times regarding how the counting of the Sera vote is done. We've seen it. I myself have witnessed it in Madrid. And with my own cell phone, I've taken pictures of how the INE manipulates the voting envelopes. The INE, the same company that gave the management of the electoral census to Babel, the information system, this company convicted of scam and fraud. Well, they themselves opened the envelopes without being electoral officials, which is completely illegal because the LOREC does not allow at all for anyone who is not an electoral official to be opening the envelopes. However, I have seen, documented, and photographed this myself, that they themselves in a secret room open those envelopes, manipulate what's inside, and they can easily know the direction of the vote because we know the envelopes are different colors. We have seen it in the case of Andalusia with different shades of green, depending on which party it was, and they can easily change them. I'm not saying it happens, but it is possible. And then the manipulated, tampered, and opened envelopes are handed over, then they're left in some boxes, and later they're taken to the ballot box. So that scenario you mentioned is perfectly plausible.
You secretly took these photos on July 23rd during the counting of the overseas absentee vote in 2023, and you reported this. What did the Electoral Board tell you?
They said there was no crime and told me to go to the prosecutor's office if needed, since it already happened. Others have reported it too. Many citizens who were there and were shocked reported it. The party representatives, none of the parties reported it. Many representatives from both the PP and your side said everything was impeccable and done perfectly. None challenged the July 23rd elections. However, many citizens came in droves, clearly shocked by what was happening there, and we have seen it with our own eyes. And that's why they don't want the vote counting to be photographed or recorded, because all those complaints have been dismissed due to lack of evidence. In other words, for not providing photos and videos of that illegality,
they forbid you from recording inside. Yes, and they forbid you from entering. But if you report it, they say you haven't given me any proof.
That's right, they're crazy.
But if they won't let you record, how will you prove it?
Exactly. It's diabolical. It's diabolical. It's totally diabolical.
Meneses and May want to talk about electoral fraud.
Based on the election fraud this guy wants to pull off. And that's why he sent that Salazar guy, the alleged sexual harasser, specifically to Buenos Aires. Why don't Vox or the PP hire the best private detective agency in Buenos Aires to do an expert report on what this guy is doing there with the votes?
If we know that things are being rigged and it's been well known, not just now, but for quite some time, then what can be done? And in fact, this is what has me worried.
Look, the situation is absurd. Everyone knows what's going on and people only speak out about it quietly. And most of the media, none of them mention the word rigging or fraud. Have you noticed that, Gabriel? The mainstream media talk just like Feijo about electoral engineering with the census. They're extremely careful. What's going on? Are they afraid of being called fake news, of being called Donald Trump? What's going on?
Well, there's still that taboo about the electoral issue. It still exists, no matter how much we've opened up the debate. And over these years, it's taken a lot of work and exposure. We've managed to bring it to public opinion. But nevertheless, there are certain institutional and journalistic sectors that really resist it, right? And also because there really isn't a definitive stance on this issue from the political parties who, in theory, are the ones harmed by these irregularities. Those first impressions or statements they're making are really quite lukewarm, aren't they?
That's what's strange. Vox is the only one speaking clearly. Why are the parties, for example, the PP, which is the most affected, Carlos, by what we're talking about? Why don't they stand up and present themselves as the one leading this charge?
Well, look, Albert, because it depends, as we Galicians say, because it depends. The two-party system has the idea in its head that now one governs, then the other, and then one will govern again. And why did the PP vote against our motion for citizen defense, which today would be more necessary than ever and would be a tremendous act of democratic hygiene? Why are they blocking it? Why did the PP oppose that project in Europe? Did they vote against it because today that motion could be useful to annoy the PSOE? Of course. Tomorrow it could be bad for them if it ends up hurting them. Yeah, look, you're going to call me annoying. Once again, I'm bringing Lenin into the conversation. And Lenin said very clearly, it doesn't matter who votes, what matters is who counts the votes. And the voto cera is a huge trap that I feel is used by both sides, by both components of the two-party system, sometimes by one, sometimes by the other. And with this component, really, we keep messing up, lowering the value of our democracy to nothing. And that's where the crooks play better than us, because they're trained to wallow in the mud and we're not. The citizens are left confused, but that's just how it is. And in the end, they have no ability to react. What can the citizen do? What can the millions of angry citizens in Spain do? We can't do anything, nothing against a guy who doesn't have a parliamentary majority. What's more, he has a proven parliamentary minority, hasn't been able to pass a single budget, and has half the government. Indicted, who has the civil guard under scrutiny, the Armed Institute, which always had a good reputation, except when the socialists with Roldan ruined it in the commission distribution. Nothing ever happens here, damn it. That's enough. That's enough.
I have a message for the two from Fraguas. The last time you came, he made comments and wants to add his opinion.
For Carlos Marcos and for Araujo, with all my love, because they know I admire them, you can call Mujica or Anguita moderate intellectuals, but never decent. A communist is an enemy of freedom. A communist is a communist. That is, someone who wants to put obstacles in your life that will prevent you from fulfilling yourself according to your own judgment. Someone who thinks you're mentally deficient and that you can only survive with a hive mind. With that attitude in life, it's hardly possible to fit in with decency. And this comment, Albert, I'm really afraid of Carlos Marcos's reply because he might answer me with a joke.
How do you joke back? I don't know either.
And I think that's respectable. In fact, I agree with 99% of what Fraguas says, right? But I can't get the feeling out of my head that the Cordobés was an honest man. He was probably more honest than communist. That's why he said some things that matched certain thoughts. But communism is a cancer, obviously. Communism kills, but it really kills. It has more than 150 million deaths on its hands. How could I defend that? No, Fraguas? I'm sure there are people. Look, even a stopped clock shows the right time twice a day. The gentleman, the man from Cordoba whom we speak of so fondly, Julio Anguita, is just a sign of respect for a person who at some point in his life said things that made us think. That's it. From there, I'm not going to defend communism, not even if I were drunk or out of my mind.
Of everything. In the case of the former Uruguayan president Pepe Mujica, he was a member of a guerrilla group that kidnapped people, planted bombs, and yet you still defend him, Gabriel.
Yes, but well, look, first, the ideological issue. These people are communists, but not practicing ones. Many times it's just an ideological matter. I think that in Anguita's case, that's it. It's ideological, but he really wasn't a practicing communist because his speeches weren't very communist, so to speak. And in the context of Pepe Mujica, you have to see that it was really during a very bloody military dictatorship as well. Let's remember in the case of Argentina as well, how people were thrown from military planes into the middle of the ocean. Anyway, we have experienced this in a very, very serious way. So in that aspect, there is a difference. We can say that violence was completely misguided in those youthful times. The good old Pepe Mujica. But later, he really didn't take on the presidency with resentment or revenge. Instead, he was actually very conciliatory, very, very much about political consensus with all the parties. And really, from a social point of view, I do think it has improved a lot, right? Uruguay, at least in that philosophical aspect. Let it be on the record.
Let's go to the newsroom, and then I have a surprise. And I think Carlos will make the point. Susana Gas, latest news, tell us.
Greetings to you all. From the Castillon Confidential newsroom, we are always receiving many messages. This is the case with Elisa. She says she is very worried. I truly am giving importance to voting because nationality involves rights that are very, very hard for us to maintain. She says, for example, if she were Cuban and diagnosed with cancer, she would buy a ticket to Spain and go straight to a hospital emergency room upon arrival. I would be put on a treatment protocol involving tests, surgeries, chemotherapy, radiotherapy, whatever was needed. I'd remain in the hospital the entire time without needing other accommodation. Trust me, I'm not making this up. I was deputy director at the clinical hospital in Zaragoza. They also have the right to the minimum living income and to non-contributory pensions, among us. Our welfare system won't be able to sustain something like that. On the other hand, Carlos Ortiz from Canada says that he insists on education. Look at my law to find a solution to the electoral census, and above all, it is in their country led by corrupt and sexually deviant individuals. Also, Carmen writes to us as well. She says, I just can't understand how they let all these rulers, this whole government, basically these people who want to destroy the country, do whatever they want. It's absolutely regrettable. Conchi says that the first thing is to acknowledge your tremendous bravery, Albert, your courage and your honor. I sincerely congratulate you. Secondly, I want to express and maintain my deep sadness about such news regarding the persecution that you and your whole family are suffering and the disaster we are living through in this country. Greetings to everyone. We have to thank a lot of people for these messages because we have received so many. Esteban says that the leftists dominate everyone who isn't one of them. It's absolutely shameful. And they call this democracy instead of tyranny. Mickey Lopez says this isn't just a game of democracy, it's something much bigger. It's all of Spain that's in danger. All of us are at risk with this government, and it seems like we can't do anything. Angeles says we have to wait for King Felipe to help us. Well, it's very clear to us because I don't think he'll do anything at all for us. And we'll leave it here, Albert. Yes, it's really important that they have to follow us on all the channels. And also, as we always say, we have a digital newspaper that's been very successful, and you can subscribe because it's absolutely free. Thank you so much, Albert.
Thank you very much. Well, there's someone I have to ask if you know. You're seeing him. His name is Javier Ron. He was one of Yolanda Diaz's friends. There he is. He was a French teacher at a high school there where you live in La Coruña. He has just been sentenced to 9 years and 6 months in prison for abuse for transmitting syphilis to a 12-year-old student. Why is it that pedophiles always surround Yolanda Diaz, Carlos? And this is the second or third time, isn't it?
Or fourth. There's this Martino guy who also abused a minor. Another person from the La Tucana group worked in the Parliament of Galicia. This one, more than anything, I'd rather send a message to feminist groups and organizations and to the unions that when there's a rapist, a pedophile, a disgusting leftist, they stay silent like rats, just like rats. The same thing happened in the Rejon case. Nothing happens. When the pedophile is one of their own, they let everything slide. Yolanda's a disaster. Yolanda's on her way out. She got together with the worst of the bunch at all times because since she never really had an army, she had to form one with social outcasts. That's what she put together. This guy was even a member of parliament with Yolanda in the parliament. I mean, this feminism they brag about when defending women is forgotten in 2 minutes. As soon as the rapist, the harasser, the murderer, the disgusting one, the bastard pedophile is from the left, that's when they forgive everything. Hey, they have an admirable capacity for self-indulgence. The left forgives its own sins very well, very well.
A lot. And then there's a scene that I had never seen in my life, Gabriel, and I want you to see it. Oscar Puente's ex-wife, divorced a couple of years ago, goes to a jewelry store to return her wedding ring. And she also wants it to be recorded. They record it, and the jewelry store in Valladolid itself posts it on social media. She's Oscar Puente's ex-wife. Listen to what she says.
Hi, Elsa. Look, I brought you the rings we talked about. You know I got divorced a few years ago and they don't mean anything to me anymore. I want to give them a new look so they don't remind me of the past. You said you would prepare designs for me and that I should come today to see them. I started with a few ideas. This one has like
a sun shape
symbolizing rebirth.
That is, it doesn't bring back any memories for me. I don't even want to see them. The farther away, the better. This is a full-on revenge, Gabriel.
Yes, completely. Well, I hope that jewelry has traceability not like the shoemaker, that it can really provide something, at least the gift receipt at the very least, right? By the way, a very important thing, and what we've discovered with the shoemaker's jewelry, is why has its value depreciated so much? I want to tell you because I remember, Albert, that at one point you were talking about 5 million, 10 million. No. I think I remember that that's actually the real price. Careful. Because what's been determined now is that Zapatero's jewel has, let's say, cracks in it. The ruby is treated with lead glass, which is a new treatment to enhance its appearance, but it depreciates the value by up to 80%. With this, we have two conclusions we can draw. First, that's why they cost 1 million and 1,300,000, but their real value could actually be 80% higher. And then that this is a new technique in the year 2006, so it's completely ruled out that these jewels were inherited, because at the very least, they date back to 2006 when those jewels were made. With this innovative treatment, that's just 20 years old, right?
So many lies. Dear friends, thank you for being there. A hug, Gabriel.
Same to you. A big hug. A hug, Carlos.
Take care. Friends, see you next time. God bless you, dear ones. Well, PACOÁLVAREZ is coming. We have a heroine. Don't miss it.
You are listening to Castillon Confidential.
593, 9,159,304.91. Completely trustworthy.
Ladies and gentlemen, here we like to focus on unsung heroes and heroines. Many times, people who outside the place where they were heroes have gone largely unnoticed. And today we're talking about a woman from Alcoy. You may not recognize the name, but Amalia Abad was a true heroine of this country. PACOÁLVAREZ, how are you? How's it going, my friend?
How's it going? Well, here I am, delighted to talk about our heroes with you.
And she's a recent heroine from the Spanish Civil War, right?
That's right, yes. I think I chose her among many victims of our war because, let's say, to show that there were indeed victims on both sides and that there aren't good dead and bad dead, right? Amalia was just an ordinary woman, a widow with 2 daughters, who was killed in 1936 during the repression for hiding 2 nuns in her house. Simple as that.
Nothing else, just because of that?
Just that. The problem is that now the ones who killed her, the ones who murdered her, are considered anti-fascist fighters. And on the other hand, she isn't considered anything, or she wouldn't be under our legislation. So, I mean, it's totally absurd.
We are elevating the murderers to memory for history and not the victims. That's a mistake. That's right.
It is. It's a complete mistake. I mean, obviously, there were atrocities on both sides. It was a war. But that's what we're doing, putting labels on the dead. It doesn't make any sense. I mean, I want to say this woman didn't die because she was a fascist or pro-Franco or anything like that. She simply, well, when she became a widow, she took refuge in faith and, well, in the Christian faith, which doesn't hurt anyone either. She doesn't really have much of a story, but it's a very curious one. And I think she's an example of many other people who went through something similar. If you want a story, it's a short biography. Please. Well, look, she was born in Alcoy, as I told you, in 1997. We know very little about her childhood and youth. We know that she wasn't fully literate. She only completed primary education. She married Luis Maestre Vidal in 1921, who was a captain in the Spanish army and died in the African War in 1921. So she became a widow, and she probably lived only on the widow's pension, right? She had 2 daughters. She had lost another baby at birth, which was quite common at that time. And well, then she decided that she wanted to study for her high school diploma. She was 38 years old. She wanted to study for her high school diploma because she wanted to be a midwife, and she wanted to be a midwife because she didn't want any child to die without being baptized. Up to that point, it doesn't seem to me that these are serious crimes, right? And well, obviously she joined, as we said before, faith helped her find comfort after her loss, after becoming a widow. She joined several Catholic associations. She was openly Catholic. And of course, when the Second Republic began and religious persecution started, she began to have a hard time. But by 1936, things got much worse.
Poor woman. How did it happen? Who killed her? What was it? Was it one of those Checas you've told me about before?
That's right, but actually it was even worse. The thing is, in 36, any public practice of religion was banned, and religion was also persecuted in private. So anyone who was known for going to mass, and of course all religious people, whether priests or nuns, were targeted for arrest. Okay? So on September 21, 1936, it seems that someone said, go to this lady's house who goes to mass a lot, which everyone knew, and the militiamen went and found that there were 2 nuns with her. So, well, they took her prisoner. As for the nuns, by the way, we don't really know what happened. I suppose they suffered a similar fate, but no, nothing was even recorded. She was taken to the Checa, and it's terrible because in the Checas, at that time, the families of the detainees had to bring breakfast, for example, and meals. They weren't given anything to eat. She was put in a cell, and for 4 days she was abused, tortured. They did all kinds of terrible things to her, until one day when her family went to bring her breakfast, they were told it's no longer necessary. Usually when they said this, it meant she had already been executed by firing squad. In this case, they said no. First, they tortured the family by saying, you no longer need to bring breakfast. When the family objected, they said she'd just been taken to Valencia to testify. That's a lie. They never took her to Valencia. They put her in a car and on the road to Benillup, which is a town near COI. On the way to, I repeat, this place, they told her, get out of the car. They shot her in the ditch, this after torturing her for 4 days and left her there abandoned like a dog. Terrible, I insist. The problem is that she is no longer a victim according to Spanish law, and her killers are considered heroes. How do we explain this to our children?
It's impossible, please. I hope this woman gets some recognition in the IOC.
None. It would be forbidden. It would be forbidden. Notice that we've only found one photo of Amalia, a photo of Amalia Abad Casasan Perez. Do you know what recognition she has received? She has been named Blessed by His Holiness. The saint, in fact, St. John Paul II Pope Boctilas, who named her blessed, along with 232 other martyrs who, well, I guess will have to be, I don't know, erased. Because, of course, the good ones are the ones who killed them. Look, the dead are well buried, and obviously there were atrocities on both sides. If we start pointing out who was more barbaric, who was more brutal, obviously that's not going to get us anywhere, and it's not going to lead us to a better democracy. I think we have to remember all the victims, no matter where they're from, like a woman who was tortured for 4 days just for having some nuns in her house. Poor thing. A widow, Colin, who lived on almost nothing, just a small pension, and she was murdered and left in a ditch. Then there are others who talk a lot about the people who are in the ditches. Well, she was in the ditch, but fortunately not anymore because they recovered her body and her grave is in the parish of San Mauro and San Francisco in Alcoy. There is her humble grave, but I mean, couldn't we name a street after her? Couldn't we put up a monument to this ordinary woman? Simple, because that would go against the democratic memory law.
My God, how we go backwards in rights and in memory. And if we forget everything you tell me here every Friday, we'll have to repeat it all over again. I hope not. Paco, thank you very much for remembering people who deserve it, like this wonderful Amalia Abad. I'm sure someone in Alcoy is listening to us and says, it's about time someone remembered her. Take care. I follow you on confidential stories. Take care of yourself. See you later. Thank you. And friends, yesterday the editorial was very personal and it has led to many messages of affection that I want to thank. I haven't shared any of them because I don't like to use this program to talk about myself. That's not why we do a daily podcast. So thank you very much. Thank you for the response. I've listened to all of them. I've read all of them, and you are amazing. You've lifted our spirits. Thank you, Maria Gona, for your donation. She says, never let them silence you. Thank you for being who you are. Thank you so much, Maria. A big kiss. and to Maria Pilar Soto from Navarra, and to Francisco Javier from PM. Thank you very much, because here we don't accept public money from anyone. That's what makes us free, and that's how we want to stay. And thank you, Juanvi, for your words.
Albert, good morning. May God bless us. Look, it's a bit long, but I'll tell you about it. You are the only investigative source for international political news and events, and often for national ones too. Almost everyone else draws from your source, from your national and international contacts, and arrogantly they don't even mention you. They just build on what you investigate. They're not as honorable as you are. My more than 80 daily contacts know it, and we all need you because you are heaven sent. Like Ram, God bless you. There are also angels spread across the earth like you. God bless you. Good morning.
God bless you too, Juanvi. You are amazing. You say things that truly move people. All right, come on, let's go. Carlos, I'm with you, and with Pilar, it's going to be Baselga. We need to build a monument to the UKO.
More than a tribute to the UCO, what I suggest is to start a crowdfunding campaign to take up a collection or something to pay tribute to make a bust of Pedro Sanchez's balls. No one's ever seen balls as big as this, guys.
Please say, come on, come on, come on. I wouldn't give a single euro for that. Well, Mari Carmen, little Valeria, do you remember how Sanchez uses children and anecdotes, which are all lies? Mari Carmen reminds us.
It's already clear that Sanchez is the worst thing that happened to Spain. But the last straw was the other day when he came out and said, "A girl wrote me a letter that I'm going to read, whose father had cancer. And what gave him life, so to speak, was listening to the PSOE rallies," or something like that. She said, "How can you have so little shame to play with an illness like that?"
You're absolutely right, Mari Carmen, but look at how she lies, because she doesn't even remember her lies and repeats them. This happened at several rallies a few months ago. We already talked about it here.
Yesterday, I was in Barcelona, I was in Obares. Just so you get an idea, it's a neighborhood, a working class neighborhood. The mother of a girl named Valeria came up to me. Valeria is 35 years old. 2 days ago, 3 days ago, I was in Extremadura. This is the sound, and at an event similar to this one, a mother came up to me who has a 35-year-old daughter. The daughter's name is Valeria, and she told me the following. She told me that during these last 2 weeks, Valeria, her daughter had been hired in a store as a sales assistant with contracts, with 2 4-hour contracts each, and she works as a sales assistant in a store. Last month, her daughter had worked 13 hours in a month and had earned 65 euros.
That's how things are being made up now. From Extremadura, from Barcelona, from a store, all lies. There is no such Valeria, just as there is surely no such man with that illness that they mention at Sanchez's rallies. Honestly, what's happening to this man is enough to have him admitted to a mental institution. And the worst part is that we're still putting up with him. It seems unbelievable. 8 years putting up with him. 8 years. To me, it feels like 80. Well, more. I love this idea. This weekend, it's going to be very hot all over Spain. In the interior of China, there is a city called Sanchez. Ultra modern. Look at what they've invented. From the rooftops of the buildings, they send down a cascade of water that breaks into a fine mist as it falls. The temperature is between 5 and 8 degrees in the building, outside the building. I know the water consumption is outrageous, but that's why the Chinese are rich, and that's why they enslave their people and pay their employees so little. So the bosses can do these kinds of things, right? But they work, be careful. The AI Sanchez and Begoña Enrique sent it to me. You can't miss it. They're having breakfast at home, and Begoña Gomez.
8 years of sentence.
Don't worry, love. They're just locking you up temporarily to keep you safe from the far right.
You can play with Chiqui, Gertrudis, Lear, and even Zapatero's daughters.
Let's just say they're all going to prison and they'll keep you company. And the last one, Angeline, is Freud Lannister. There's a boy who's going to visit the Moncloa Palace, and there's Bolaños, who's Sanchez's servant, and this happens.
And this is where my brother holds his concerts. Those we force to attend always say they love it.
Great. Her brother is under investigation.
Right? Yes, that's right. Who told you that?
My dad.
Your dad is so nice.
Begonia is under investigation too, right?
Yes, her too. Did your dad say that too?
Yes, and that you're a scoundrel who's lost badly for 7 votes?
Wow, so your father is a fascist, son of Tranquilo Sanchidad.
He also says Chapote will vote for you.
My dad already told me you were crazy.
Oh.
Well, that's it for you, Mr. Sonas. And the image is broadcast in the country. Brutal attack on a little far-right extremist. It's intolerable. Asante almost ended the life of our beloved president. What would become of us Sanchez?
Andolani.
That's right, Sarah. Another blow to democracy by the far right. We're going live to an emergency press conference called by the president.
Despite the tremendous aggression I suffered from that little far-rightist, don't worry, I'm fine.
That's life.
Friends, just like life itself, Freud Lannister never lies and never disappoints. Friends, get ready. We'll probably show up tomorrow with a special program. Stay tuned. It's almost become a tradition to show up here on Saturdays and poke our heads in. Thank you for being there. Stay strong. Keep your spirits up. Don't let your guard down. We're still in the trenches.
You know it and I know it. We are confidential. You are confidential. I am confidential. All confidential. All confidential. But shh, only for open-minded and awake people. From the trench, the bullets whistle, and there's no way to get out there. Here, freedom has wings of wax. Albert Castellon, Susanna Gash. Your girl is myself. Others. Thank you very much. Hasta mañana a las 8.
Castillon Confidential by Albert Castillon.